Detective Recap here. Today, I'm going to explain a drama film called Lolita. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. Humbert drives along the U.S. countryside, a bobby pin in his bloodstained hand and an equally bloodstained gun in his backseat. He thinks about a young girl, and though she's known by many names from Lo to Dolores, she will always be Lolita in his arms. As his tearful and unblinking eyes stare ahead, he thinks of her as the light of his life, fire of his loins, his sin and his soul. Humbert attributes Lolita's existence to a certain Annabelle. She died shortly after he fell in love with her when they were teenagers. Though the child he loved was gone, he kept looking for her even as he grew into adulthood. Humbert accepted a teaching post at an American college, and since he had a free summer before the fall semester, he decided to finish a textbook he was writing. He makes his way to his accommodation, and there, a widow named Charlotte Hayes greets him. After showing him her messy home, Charlotte leads him to the garden. While she's proudly showing him her lilies, Humbert becomes wholly transfixed by the sight of her daughter, Lo. Lo is lying on the grass on her stomach, flipping through a book while their sprinkle drizzles her. When Lo notices him, she flashes him a smile, showing off her retainers and highlighting her young age of 14. Being the sick man that he is, Humbert is immediately enchanted, and he asks Charlotte how much his room is. Days pass, and Humbert wistfully and secretly watches childish and dance and music-obsessed Lo, who seems completely disinterested in him. From his room, he can see the bathroom, and from there, he can see Lo's bedroom. He watches her mother bicker with her, and he watches her idle around. Humbert prays for an accident, a calamity that would eliminate Charlotte and everyone around them so he can have Lolita in his arms. While Humbert's working on his textbook one day, Lo heads inside his room to bother him. She stands behind his desk, then sits on his lap without warning, just to stick the gum she's been chewing onto his notebook. Lo gives him a defiant look at first, then asks him if she's getting a zit. This warms Humbert, and he tells her that she looks perfect to him. Humbert happily smiles when Lo shows him her wobbling chin, but the girl promptly stands up and rushes out of his room when she hears Charlotte call for Humbert. Before Charlotte could see him, he hurriedly takes Lo's gum from his notebook to chew it himself, removing any evidence of her being there. After some time, Charlotte makes Lo pack her things for camp, then boarding school right afterward. Lo refuses to cooperate, and when Charlotte snaps that everyone, Humbert included, thinks it's a good idea, Lo grabs her doll and storms out of her room. She makes sure to strike Humbert's arm when she passes him, calling him a double-crosser. When it's time for Lo to leave, she bickers endlessly with her mother as they head to the car, but she makes sure to give their maid Louise a loving hug. Just as Lo gets in the car, she spots Humbert watching her from the window. Much to her mother's annoyance, Lo runs back to their home, then up the stairs so she can jump for Humbert. Lo wraps her legs and arms around him, then kisses him softly. She pulls away shortly, and without another word, she runs back to the car, and they drive off. As for Humbert, he rushes straight to Lo's room, then dives into her closet. But when he hears Louise calling out to him, he immediately straightens up to meet her. She gives him a letter, and when he reads it, he discovers that it's from Charlotte, professing her love to him. She says that she wants him out when she gets home because if he stays, it would only mean that he wants to be her husband and Lo's father. Of course, it's that very last part that reels Humbert in. And on the various collages stuck to Lo's wall, there's a magazine clipping of a father embracing his daughter, with the letters HH enclosed in a heart. This hints that Lo longs for a father, too. The two get married 2 weeks after, with Lo absent from the ceremony. Though Charlotte is very affectionate with Humbert, he remains dismissive of her. 6 weeks into their marriage, Humbert successfully avoids most of his husbandly duties by feeding Charlotte sleeping pills. One day, Humbert comes home to find Charlotte crying. It turns out that she had read his diary where he called her a fat cow, old and stupid, and obnoxious, among many things. Furious and distraught, Charlotte calls him a despicable, criminal monster. She promises to leave, and when she does, she swears that Humbert will never see the miserable brat of a daughter again. Humbert is left bewildered, unsure at all of what to do. He tries to tell her that the writing is from a novel he's working on, but when she doesn't buy it, he goes to fix them up a drink. When he returns, he answers their ringing phone. The caller tells him that his wife had been killed. Outside their home, Charlotte had been hit by a car. A child hands Humbert the letters, explaining that she was going to mail them when she got hit. Dazed, Humbert accepts the letters and heads back to their house, where he can stop pretending that he cares for his wife's death. After some time, Humbert packs up Lo's clothes, then drives to camp to pick her up. When she sees him, she smiles brightly as she greets Humbert, calling him Dad. While in their car, Lo asks him how her mother is, and with some uncertainty, Humbert says that the doctors aren't sure and that it's something abdominal. Lo then proceeds to go to the back of the car to get changed while the perverse Humbert watches through the rearview mirror. Once Lo's back in the shotgun seat, Humbert pulls her close to kiss the top of her head, telling her that he missed her. Lo sneers as she retorts that she didn't miss him before snuggling closer again to taunt him about how she was revoltingly unfaithful to him. She continues about how it doesn't matter since he doesn't care about her, anyway. When Humbert asks what gave her the idea, she answers that he hasn't kissed her yet. In response, Humbert pulls over. He lets Lo get on his lap, and the two of them share a heated kiss, only stopping when a cop car pulls over beside them. The officer asks if they saw a blue sedan, but when Lo crawls over Humbert's lap to give her playful answers, the cop thanks them awkwardly then drives away. The two later arrive at a hotel. While Humbert speaks with the receptionist, Lo gets on the ground and starts crawling to a dog to play with it mischievously. The dog's owner is a wealthy and much older man clad in a pristine suit. The moment she laid her eyes on him, Lo becomes wholly intrigued by the stranger. The enigmatic man says that the dog likes her, but he doesn't like everybody. When Lo asks who the dog likes, he says that he can smell when people are sweet and that he likes nice, sweet, young people just like her. Lo gives him a sly smile in response. Humbert leads Lo to their hotel room, and once inside, she asks him incredulously if they'll be sharing the same room and the same bed. Humbert tries to reason that he can take the cot if she'd like, and as Lo slumps down on the chair, she calls him crazy. With a dismissive and uncaring tone, she talks about her mother divorcing him and strangling her if she finds out. Humbert sits on the bed, attempting to explain to her that as her father, he's responsible for her welfare, and since they're not rich, they're bound to share the same room when they travel. Understanding where this is going, Lo gets up and prances around while Humbert struggles to tell her what happens to two people when they share a room. Lo casually finishes for him, saying that the word is incest. After checking into their room, the two later have dinner. Lo gestures to one of the men in the booths, claiming that he's watching them. It's the dog owner from the lounge, and she identifies him as the playwright, Quilty. Later that night, the two are back in their hotel room, and Humbert's removing Lo's shoes and socks. With heavy eyes and a quiet voice, she wants to tell him about how naughty and disgusting she was at camp, but Humbert insists that she tells him tomorrow instead. He will go downstairs for a while, and when he comes back, he wants to find her asleep. Before he leaves, Lo bids him a good night, Dad. When Humbert arrives at the hotel's porch, he hears Quilty, as he rocks in his chair, speak. "Where in the devil did you get her?" he asks, but when Humbert asks what he said, he tells him that the weather is getting better. He then asks who the girl is, and when Humbert tells him that she's his daughter, Quilty tells him that he lies. She's not. But when he repeats himself, he says that July was hot. After discovering that Lo's mother is dead, he invites them to have lunch with him. Humbert politely declines, and before he leaves, Quilty tells him quite knowingly that his child needs a lot of sleep. Humbert returns to their room, and he lies on the tiny portion of the bed that Lo's not sprawled onto. Come next morning, Lo wakes up and blows on his face. She kisses him softly and sloppily before whispering something in his ear, prompting Humbert to reiterate if she really played that with Charlie, someone she met at camp. Lo asks if he never tried it when he was a kid, and when he says he hasn't, Lo supposes that she'll have to show him everything. She removes her retainers and undoes Humbert's pajama pants, bringing him to pure bliss. They leave the hotel by car, and after some failed attempts at conversation, a pensive Humbert laments about how uncomfortable he's grown, as if he's sitting next to the ghost of someone he'd just killed. Lo asks if they can stop at a gas station, then anguishes about hurting inside. She asks him what he expected since she was a Daisy Fresh girl. Then, Lo muses about calling the police to tell them he forced himself on her before breaking into a grin. The two playfully swat at each other, and when they arrive at the gas station, Lo rushes to the store. When Lo comes back, she asks Humbert for coins so she can call her mother. Humbert's pensive expression turns somber, and he instructs her to sit in the car again. After she closes the door, Humbert finally tells her that her mother is dead. That night, the two lay in separate beds. Lo cries and wails, grieving and despairing over her lost mother. Eventually, the still sobbing girl makes her way to Humbert's bed, and he takes her into his arms, trying to comfort her. Humbert claims that they made up very gently that night and that she had nowhere else to go. From then on, they started traveling extensively all over the country. One hot morning in an inn, Lo and Humbert make love on a chair while Lo's reading comics. But after some time, Lo takes on a sullen face when she's finally alone. She glares at then ignores Humbert as he checks on her until she leaves her be. Later, a sorrow-filled Lo weeps. Time passes, and Humbert visits Beardsley Prep School so he may enroll his pretend daughter there. He speaks with the administration, and they emphasize that, unlike Beardsley College where Humbert will teach in, Beardsley Prep prioritizes dramatics, dancing, and dating. By dating, they mean boys. Humbert is, of course, perturbed. After some days, Lo tells Humbert that she wants to participate in a play, but Humbert refuses. With an even voice, Lo protests that he's depriving her of her civil rights, but Humbert dismisses it, asking her where she heard that language. After calmly asserting that she's intelligent, she makes her way to Humbert to sit on the floor before him. She uses her foot to rock the man on his chair, telling him that she has the right to be in a play if she wanted, to which Humbert retorts with, "Not if he says she doesn't." With that, Lo starts toying with Humbert's lap, and knowing fully well that he likes that, she bargains both her allowance and her involvement in the play. In return, Humbert gets more. While Lo is rehearsing for her role as a witch in the school play, one of the schoolgirls, Mona, speaks with Humbert. She directs his attention to a watching man smoking by the exit, saying that it's Claire Quilty, the actual playwright. According to Humbert, Lo has grown colder to his advances, leading him to purchase her favors instead. In the middle of their intimate engagement, Lo attacks him while he tries to take his money back from her, saying he shouldn't pay extra in the middle. He doesn't know where she hides the money, but he's certain she's saving up to escape from him. Humbert starts growing uneasy and paranoid. He's afraid that Lo told the principal about their relationship, so when she mentions she has a complete disinterest in intimate matters, he feels completely anxious. At home, Humbert confronts Lo about missing piano practice and possibly telling her friend about their relationship. Their back and forth grows heated when Humbert slaps her feet off the table. Lo's calm and petulant facade melts away, especially when he tried to grab her wrist. She calls him a pervert, yelling at him to leave her alone. Lo admits to trying to run from him, and that anyone would run away from him. But when she shrieks that she earned her money, Humbert slaps her, taking the both of them aback. Humbert is speechless at first, and Lo starts ordering him to murder her. She grows more and more frantic, telling him to murder her like he murdered her mother over and over again. Lo starts breaking down, sobbing that she's asking him to murder her. Humbert could only tell her to shut up, and Lo starts frantically hitting him, yelling that she hates him. When Humbert attempts to pacify her by holding her, Lo only grows hysterical. She breaks free for him and makes a run for it, sobbing and shrieking murderer as she runs down the stairs. Upon reaching the ground, she takes a bike and rides it out into the rainy city, with Humbert trying to follow her. At night, Humbert finally finds Lo in a shop. They journey back home, and Lo, who had been plotting her escape just hours before, tells him that she wants to leave Beardsley now and take another trip instead. Only this time, she will choose where to go. The following day, the pseudo-father-daughter pair departs from Beardsley and embarks to wherever Lo wants. She marks a map with her lipstick, so Humbert knows where to go. But as they're driving along, Humbert notices that someone's following them. He gives Lo the car's license plate to write down and tells her that a detective's following him, and he looks rather like his uncle Gustav. Lo dismissively continues to eat her banana in response. Their pursuer was smart, Humbert notes inwardly. He kept changing cars, and there were days when he'd disappear, leaving him to wonder if he imagined things. One day, Humbert stops at a gas station, and inside the shop, he's trying on some sunglasses. When he looks out the window, he sees Lo talking to a black-clad man wearing a hat, and by the time Humbert had rushed out, the man is gone. Apprehensive, Humbert gets in the car and asks Lo about him, and she explains that he asked if they had a map. As they set off, Humbert tells her that the man was the cop who had been tailing them, but Lo remains unfazed and uncaring since Humbert's the only one who's guilty there. The two eventually stay in an inn again, and Humbert leaves Lo to get her bananas while he gets a haircut. In the barbershop, he hears from the radio that Claire Quilty will be in Wace, Texas that night. Anxious, Humbert returns to the inn and finds Lo sitting down, her feet dirty and her lipstick smeared. Spiraling to paranoia, Humbert looks out the window and sees the same car following them outside, and when he looks back at Lo, who's been watching him, she flashes him a mocking smile. Suddenly, Humbert pushes Lo to the bed, gets on top of her, and starts demanding to know who it is. He roughly opens Lo's shirt and has his way with her while begging to know who the man is. Lo only laughs and laughs at him, and Humbert only grows more desperate. He keeps begging and groveling in between their sloppy kisses. Lo keeps laughing, leaving him on the verge of tears. A heavy storm wakes Humbert up. He is still naked, disoriented, and everything is stretching and slanting out of proportion. Humbert's scared, delusional, almost, and it isn't until he washes his face that he grasps a semblance of normalcy again. From his luggage, he takes his gun out, and with it in his hand, he stares at nothing in particular. They leave, and on a rainy night, they stop by another inn. As the woman shows Humbert to their room, they notice Lo sitting on the ground, pale and shivering. In the hospital, the doctor tells Humbert that it's just a virus and assures him that it's nothing serious. Humbert wants to stay there with her, but the doctor curtly insists that it's better if he goes since it won't help if he catches it. The next morning, Humbert calls the hospital to ask how Lo is doing, and the nurse tells him that she woke up without a fever, and they let her go with her uncle Gustav. For months on end, Humbert searches far and wide for his nymphette, as he would call her. He goes from inn to inn, hotel to hotel. He's learned to recognize the kidnapper's handwriting, but eventually, the trail goes dead and cold, and back to cold and dead Beardsley he goes. 3 years later, Humbert receives a letter. It opens with "Dear Dad, how's everything? I'm married. I'm going to have a baby." A tear falls down Humbert's face as he reads the letter, and there, Lo asks him for money. She and her husband don't have enough to pay their debts and leave for Alaska, where her husband got promised a job. The letter ends with Lo saying she's gone through so much sadness and hardship, and she signs it off with Dolly, Mrs. Richard F. Schiller. Humbert drives to the address, and he finds a dusty, worn-down home. He goes to the door, and finally, he's reunited with Lo once more. She's no longer dolled up like she used to be, her hair in a simple ponytail, and her belly large with another man's child. Lo smiles brightly, greets him as dad, and lets him in. Humbert walks around their messy home and sees her husband through the back door, working on some electric wires. He looks closer to her age, and Humbert knows that he's not the man he's looking for. He asks her for her kidnapper, and when Lo gets a cigarette instead of telling him, he starts walking out the door. Finally, she tells him that it was Claire Quilty. With a dreamy smile, Lo remarks about how he was the only man she was ever really crazy about, and when Humbert asks, "What about me?" Lo seems to grow upset. At Humbert's insistence, she tells him about how everyone knew Quilty liked little girls and that he filmed them in his mansion. But since she refused to service groups of men because she wanted Quilty, instead, he threw her out. As Humbert looks at her, he knew as clearly as he knew he will die that he loves her more than anything he'd ever seen or imagined on earth. He follows her to the living room, and with Lo sitting on the floor, Humbert finally calls her Lolita. He asks her to make the 25 steps with him to the old car she knows so well. Lo asks if he's saying that he'll give them money if she goes to a motel with him, but Humbert quickly tells her that he wants her to leave the place and live, die, and everything with him. Lo could only call him crazy, but Humbert insists that she can still have the money even if she refuses. He smilingly gives her the envelope, and she finds $4,000 bills there. But Humbert starts to cry while watching her go through the money. With a smile, Lo tries to reach for him and thank him, but he backs away, saying he'll die if she touches him. For his last grasp at hope, Humbert asks if there's a chance she'll come with him, but she tells him matter-of-factly she'd almost rather go back with Claire. Humbert begins to take his leave, and when he asks her if she can ever forget what he did to her, Lo only tells her dog to say goodbye to her dad. Humbert dejectedly returns to his car, and from there, he sees Lo waving him goodbye. For a moment, he pictures Lo as his Lolita from 3 years ago, dolled up and waving playfully. Humbert finds himself in Quilty's lavish manner afterward. Despite Humbert's presence, Quilty remains unbothered, even as he brought out a gun. Humbert introduces himself as Lo's father, and Quilty continues to speak casually with Humbert, as if unaware of the gravity of the situation. It isn't until Humbert shoots awfully close to him that he starts treating this a touch more seriously. Quilty manages to run away, and he bolts to a room with a piano to play it. Humbert shoots his back, but he's run out of bullets by then, so he quickly reloads while the bloody Quilty staggers to the hallway. Humbert shoots him repeatedly, and the man falls to the ground. However, he isn't dead yet, and he still finds it in him to crawl to his room and onto his bed. There, Humbert finally delivers his final shot. A hopelessly devastated Humbert drives along the U.S. countryside, a bobby pin in his bloodstained hand and an equally bloodstained gun in his backseat. With the police on his tail and another group of officers blocking his way, Humbert swerves to a field as his surrender. Humbert leaves his car, and before the police could take him, he overlooks a village, where he could hear the melody of children at play. He thinks that the hopelessly poignant thing was not Lolita's absence from his side, but the absence of her voice from the chorus. Humbert died in prison of coronary thrombosis on November 16, 1950. A month later, Lolita died in childbirth on Christmas Day. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.